Last year's Black Friday sales amounted to $10.8 billion. So as much as people are complaining that, the discounts aren't discounting as they used to, it's clear that people are still shopping.
So if you need to secure additional support, do that early on. Don't wait till November. You can't run out of products during BFCM. So that's a big no-no. And finally, you need to create a playbook with a bunch of FAQs, certain escalation paths that agents can follow, and real-time updates.
That can turn me into an advocate rather than an enemy, because at the end of the day, if I'm satisfied, I'm going to tell my friend, I'm going to tell those who are close to me. But if the experience wasn't good, I'm still going to talk, and it just might cause you to lose a set of customers.
Crown it all as well. I think business owners should try their best not to stress out their team, and by that I mean leaving your two-man team to answer all those tickets. It's just overwhelming. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to clock in today because it's a lot. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the LTVplus podcast. Let's talk about CX. Today we have a very important episode lined up, and it's very timely as well. So as you all know, Q3 is coming to an end. You know what that means? Peak season is right around the corner. This is a very delicate time for e-commerce businesses. We have Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales. We have the holiday rush. So it's very important to plan well and plan ahead of time as well so that you can make the most of the peak season. So today I have two special guests with me, and they're going to be the perfect people to walk any e-commerce business owner through the peak season. I have Miss Melissa with us. She's our general manager here at LTVplus, and she's a master of multitasking, right? We have an outsourcing company with over 200, 300 employees, and Mel is managing all of that. So if anyone can tell you how to get your operations in check right before BFCM, she's your girl. And we also have Mr. Clement Brown, who is a customer success manager here at LTVplus as well. He works with a bunch of different campaigns. So he's the perfect person to tell you how to nail customer success in this season as well, because it's a very delicate time. He's going to be giving us all the gems from the customer success perspective. So welcome, guys. Thank you for joining the episode today.
Hi, Vanessa. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. As we all know, for e-commerce business owners specifically, BFCM is a very delicate time. I mean, last year's Black Friday sales amounted to $10.8 billion, which is just crazy. So as much as people are complaining that, the discounts aren't discounting as they used to, it's clear that people are still shopping. People still anticipate the BFCM sales. It's also a tricky time for customer support specifically, right? Because businesses get an overwhelming amount of tickets, and just so much goes on in the customer service department specifically. So we're just going to get right into it. The first question I have is for you, Mel. What operational pitfalls do e-commerce businesses overlook when it comes to Black Friday, right? Because some people always feel like they're ready and they're going to nail the season, but then it comes and you just find out that you're completely unprepared. So what are the most common challenges you see when it comes to operations?
Well, many businesses, they focus mainly on marketing and sales campaigns, but they underestimate the operational side of things. So the most common pitfalls that I can see are, companies that are not forecasting the support volumes correctly, and then not training seasonal staff early enough. And then also, they're overlooking shipping and return readiness, because they can't foresee what's mostly going to happen, once BFCM hits. And a huge miss is also not stress testing the systems that they have, the help desk, the websites, to make sure that they can actually handle the surge.
Stress test is an interesting one. And what do you think is the best way to do that, right? For people who don't even know what that means, can you just shed more light on that specifically?
First off, it's looking at the historical data, just checking like the normal volume of customers that are visiting their websites up to a point. For example, how the search did for last year's BFCM. Then from there, they'll be able to forecast just how huge the increase is going to be. And then, checking out how their system actually did. For example, was the website able to handle the sudden surge? Were there any gaps, any delays when ordering? Was there any skips, any errors that were received? So those kind of things, it's very important to stress test the website and also whatever tools that they're using, to accept orders, to accept client, feedback or questions.
Okay, really interesting. And for you, Clemens, what would you say on the customer side, right? Because you work with mostly customer facing problems. So what would you say are maybe the most common problems that the customers have specifically, and then also the e-commerce business owners? What do they have the most problems with?
So just from, I think, just also going back from what Mel started out with, during the, BFCM period, business owners tend to really look at the revenue, like how much revenue can I generate, how much sales I can get overall, but not necessarily focusing on what the operations or the customer service team will eventually encounter. But when I think about the different you know, conversation drivers that we encounter from a customer service standpoint, it is one that you mentioned earlier. Where is my order? Because of the stress on the systems, shipping companies will, have problems as it relates to receiving and processing the different orders and getting them out in a timely manner. And I think that's why Amazon is so good, because they have such a fast turnaround time. So the where is my order type of tickets, those are one of the top interactions that we will get. Mel alluded to having a proper return infrastructure and so on in place. Sometime when we're, putting things in place, we don't take into account that customers might make mistakes, that, the shipping team might make an error here and there. So we have to ensure that we have strong foundation in that. So we do have a lot of people wanting to exchange and return discount code. Wow, that's the reason for purchasing, right? A lot of people, they are getting bigger discounts than usual. So they want to take advantage of this season. So we have a lot of people saying, hey, I got this code, it is not working. We have a lot of people who would have made an order like a week or two ago. You now have a bigger discount. Can it be applied retroactively to my order? And then because of the time that we're in, where we're trying to automate as much as possible, so some customers would need a human interaction, and they just might be complaining, hey, I cannot get to a human, the robots are not helping me. I need to speak to someone. So you might have a lot of those coming in as well. And I think those are some of the key things that I would say that, we will encounter from a customer facing point of view.
Yeah, very interesting to know, especially with the robots thing, because I feel like maybe we would have had that issue a few years ago, but now everyone is tired of talking to the robots.
That's true.
Get as a human, especially during those busy seasons, it can be so frustrating from a buyer's perspective. So that's really interesting. We're going to get more into how businesses can avoid those kind of pitfalls and align all their teams to, optimize that process a bit better. But first of all, let's just talk about operational readiness, right? Because I know once you don't have those main systems on lock, honestly, no matter how great the customer support is, if all of that isn't aligned properly, it can just fall apart easily, right? Well, what would you say are some of the key steps that businesses should ensure that they can handle that peak traffic?
Okay, so if they have been in the business for a while, the source of truth is actually the historical data. Like looking at, the previous year, how they did during BFCM, that's very important. And then next is to start with people and processes. So if you need to secure additional support, do that early on. Don't wait till November. Make sure that they've trained them well. Ideally, train them with scenario-based training. Like, where's my order? Why is my discount code not working? How can I return this? I don't like it. And then on the product and logistics side, making sure that, of course, there's actually a number of products to be purchased. You can't run out of products during BFCM. So that's a big no-no.
Hmm.
Aside from the inventory, fulfillment needs to be also like laid out properly. Customer service, so communication happens seamlessly. And finally, if you need to create a playbook with a bunch of FAQs, certain escalation paths that agents can follow, and real-time updates, very important, to keep the team consistent, and you guys can pivot, whenever, just in case you come up with any issues.
Wow, that sounds like a whole lot to manage right before BFCM. So I can definitely understand why it just makes sense to start early, right? If you want to make the most out of it. But since it seems like a lot to shuffle, are there any kind of technologies that you think businesses can use to maybe make that job easier and also monitor the performance in real time?
Well, there are a bunch of, help desk platforms right now, and that's really necessary if a company would like to ensure that, each of the customer inquiries are being attended to on time. It keeps tickets organized, the response times are invisible, they can see it right away. And then if you pair that with a shipping software that provides real-time tracking, as well as a CRM that integrates everything together. Also, one thing that would help is a simple dashboard. So you like the team can monitor KPIs like first response time, order status updates. So as I mentioned earlier, when they see that, for example, certain product is running low, then they can pivot quickly, like, update the website. They can react quickly to things because they're seeing it as it's happening.
I'm sure having one platform with everything aligned in the platform just makes it a whole lot easier, right? Because they can track the inventory, they can also track customers' histories, customers' journeys. So let's talk about the people specifically, right? Because I think you can have the best products, you can have the best tools, but if you don't have great people behind that, it can also just fall apart at the blink of an eye. So what would you say are some best practices for staffing for the peak season specifically? Because I know another concern a lot of e-commerce owners have is that they have this massive traffic, right, during BFCM, and it's just so many people, so many orders. But then after BFCM and for the rest of the year, it gets pretty quiet. So that flexibility as well. What would you just recommend as best practices for that?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, you guys should be hiring early. For preparing is better than, like experiencing the search and not having enough people to answer customer inquiries. So it's better to be over prepared. And what our clients have been doing, like the ones that are really doing well during BFCM, is that they have a mix. So they have like permanent staff, and then they also add in seasonal agents depending on the forecast that they did using the historical data. So like, for example, as it's nearing BFCM, they start adding, a couple of agents, seasonal agents, and then they add more, in the coming weeks or so. So that what they can do is, for example, personal staff can actually handle escalations, quality assurance, and then the seasonal agents can take on the volume, like product questions or pre-sales questions. And then outsourcing companies like LTVplus, like provides flexibility. Clients can scale up or down depending on the demand. So we've had like clients, scaling up depending on what the forecast says, and then scaling down once it starts quieting down. So that's the flexibility that outsourcing companies can actually offer.
And now that we have the people behind it, the tools, all those things unlocked, the next best thing is customer service, right? The team is overwhelmed, the customers are frustrated, and all this goes down to the brand. So it's very important to also lock that in. We're going to turn it over to you, Clement. How do we help clients align their customer support with the other departments and the other operational management?
All right. So I would say when we think about it, a customer relationship and building a lifetime value goes way beyond just the purchase. It goes way beyond the sales. So having that infrastructure in place where there is a clear line of communication, that will definitely help to ensure that everything flows seamless. For example, let's say the marketing team is sending out emails or different promotions that the CS team is not ready or prepared for. Someone might make a phone call, but they are bringing up information that you as the CS is not familiar with, right? So if you are not familiar with what the marketing team is sending out, then that already birth a level of distrust in the customer is communicating with you. So it is important that there is a unified communication area. For example, we use Slack, we use Workspace for our centralized communication. What that will give is that if there is anything that is happening, we can always put it at a central location where everyone is able to have visibility on what's happening. We could have a shared document or just shared folder that has the different updates at different points so that everybody can be familiar with what's happening at what point. And, just the different managers at different level will also be able to, be fully aligned. So I think having that level of centralized communication definitely would help. And proactive sharing, training where necessary, because if something new will be rolled out, for a sale that is coming up, you want to ensure that the agents are adequately trained to handle any form of objections that they might encounter, that they are ready for the different type of questions that the customers will be throwing at them. So that will help also with the stress, because with the volume increase, that alone brings on a level of stress on the agents. But when they feel like they know what they're doing and they're equipped to handle what might come at them, it will help to alleviate some of the stress. So having, a proper structure in place for training and that the information is properly shared ahead of time with them, that also help. Ensure that we have everything streamlined as it relates to, resolution and escalation. So have a clear process as it relates to what happened when you reach this point of the communication. Who is the right person to reach out to for seamless and effective closure of whatever problem it might be. Because when you think about the communication with the different customer, how quickly you can get to a resolution, how quickly you can solve the problem that I'm presenting to you, that can turn me into an advocate rather than an enemy. Because at the end of the day, if I'm satisfied, I'm going to tell my friend, I'm going to tell those who are close to me. But if the experience wasn't good, I'm still going to talk, and it just might cause you to lose a set of customers. And we have to ensure finally that our KPIs are clearly aligned. Expectations as it relates to what we want to accomplish is clearly stated, so an agent know that at the end of the day, this is my target, and I'll do anything that I need to do to ensure I meet this.
Yeah, wow. That definitely hits the nail right on the head, right? And I think one thing that's sticking out to me at the back of my mind is just the importance of documentation and like real-time documentation as well, whether it's knowledge bases, FAQs, or whatever the situation is, just making sure there's those clear lines, like you said, for resolutions, escalations, and just communications within all the teams as well. So thank you for raising those points. One thing we did touch on a lot was stress on agents in this peak season, right? We can't avoid it, unfortunately, but we definitely can make it less stressful for the teams. So, Clemens, do you have any tips for maybe some creative ways to make sure that teams don't burn out and they can keep on giving that personalized, empathetic support that we love?
When someone is motivated to do any work, when they see it not just as another task, but something that there is purpose to doing it, you wake up with an excitement to get the job done rather than just, like, I'm not sure I want to be here today, because it's going to be draining. It's going to carry a level of weight. But at the end of the day, if we can find a way to incentivize the work that is being done, it's an extra layer of motivation, I would say. So we can't, I don't want to say can't, but it's going to be hard to prevent the stress that will come with the season. right? So if we can find a way to say, hey, I know that this is going to be stressful. However, this is how I plan to compensate whatever work you are going to do during this time. It just might be a spark of motivation for that person. What I love with LTV Plus in particular is that we try to put things in place where the agent can actually de-stress, for want of a better word. Like, you can relax a little bit, you play games even for 30 minutes. You have a cafe break where you can laugh, take a break from work and just sit down and enjoy other colleagues, and just enjoy that moment. So like, have something in place where the agent can at least de-stress, where they can take their mind off everything. And I think that's another area that I think could possibly help. And aside from that, having an avenue where, if it's a case where someone is feeling burnt out, if it's a case where someone is feeling stressed, that they have something in place or someone who they can go to kind of, share what's happening, to see how they can receive any help, because the well-being of the staff is very important, right? So we have to have something in place where they can go for help if they ever feel like they need it. And another thing that I would say is definitely to ensure that there is a clear definition of what their goals are, because when they have clear understanding of what their goals are, it will help them, to reach whatever target at the end of the day, so that we can, meet our goals. And if it's a case where they are, not able to reach it, that they have a way that they can speak to someone. Maybe they need additional training. Maybe it's a case where they don't feel confident in operating in a particular area of the inbox, and you need to focus them somewhere while you have your more skilled staff focus on another area.
Really, really great tips. And I think to crown it all as well, I think business owners should try their best not to stress out their team, like add any extra stress, right? And by that, I mean leaving your two-man team to answer all those tickets. It's just overwhelming. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to clock in today because it's a lot. So being able to have shifts, being able to have the seasonal staff that Mel spoke about as well, outsourcing, just take some load off your internal team, I think would also go a long way to helping that. So now we've, gotten down to the nitty-gritty of it. So let's talk about direct benefits, right? Because these all sound great to hear. You're hearing them, they sound amazing. Everybody wants to do this. But what are the real benefits of planning ahead, right? And locking things down before that peak season? And so the question I have is for Mel, and I just wanted to find out, how does operational planning really improve things objectively?
Well, operational planning simply means fewer surprises. So when you've trained your team, you've documented your processes, you've set up the right tools, what will happen is that the response times drop because the agents know exactly what to do. So what happens after that? It leads to smoother customer experiences. And ultimately, the customer satisfaction rate is going to be, 100%. So another thing is that outsourcing partners can actually help streamline this even more by handling the operational side of things. So, we like in outsourcing partners like LTV Plus, we can be strategic in making sure that we've trained the people, we've equipped them, they know how to answer, they know where to find the answers. So one example I can give you is that we had like one apparel company. So what they did was that they did a post analysis from the past BFCM, like the sales there. They checked the data and they found out that they need to improve the sizing guides because they got a lot of questions about, the sizing guides of their products. So with analyzing those data, they found out that, hey, we're going to need to be clear when it comes to our sizing guides. So that led to, a dramatic decrease in the number of questions about the size because their customers already know what size to pick. That's like great operational planning.
I love that realistic, direct case study as well, because it really puts things into perspective. So how about you, Clement? Because I know, right, customer support can go a very long way. A lot of people view customer support as like a cost center. That's like a dated approach to looking at things. But customer support really helps a lot. I can't tell you how many times that I have gone back to purchase from a brand just because I really loved their customer support and how they handle things. Even while I'm shopping, right? Sometimes I want to buy one product, but a really good customer support agent can convince me that, you know what, maybe you do need two products or three. Or, things to go along with that. So I know that quality customer support really goes a long way to helping to, maximizing those sales and the revenue from the peak season. So what are some benefits that you guys might have seen in your team from personalized customer support and just good customer support in the season?
Yeah, I would say some of the benefits of that personalized customer support for sales in particular is, so when you think of as what you just mentioned, if there is a well-trained agent, that agent can act as a sales consultant on on whatever interaction. So you wouldn't need to necessarily have a team isolated for sales, but your support agent, by listening with that empathetic ear and that ear to just help, they are able to increase conversion. You're talking about a case where even your average order value can increase, in the sense that from a conversation, I don't know what you might love to buy, but let's say, you are purchasing, let's say, a camera, for example. You are purchasing a camera, but then the camera need lens. The camera also need a memory card. Maybe you need a tripod as well, depending on what you want to do. So an agent who knows the catalog very well, and they're well trained, they will be able to see, okay, based on my interaction with her, this is what she need. But wait, what if I was to, start a conversation around this? From that camera, one item, you are now purchasing four items without even realizing it, because there's a need for it, right? Because of how skillful or how well trained this agent actually is, it causes it to move from that simple interaction to an upsell or cross sell, in essence. Even if it's a case where someone reaches out to cancel their subscription or to no longer purchase a product, if that agent is well trained, they are able to interact with them in such a way to say, hey, all right, this one might not be working, but how about we try this one for a brand that we support that deals with food for pet? A lot of times someone might just say, hey, this product is not working because my pet doesn't like the way it tastes, or they're allergic to this particular flavor, right? So the agent, because they are knowledgeable of, oh, we have many other flavors that I could actually recommend, so they could engage in a conversation to say, all right, so I can see here on the order that, let's say, you have a salmon flavor, but if it's a dog, for example, do they like beef? We have a beef flavor that they could possibly try, or a chicken flavor, and if it's an allergic reaction, they could always try to see, all right, what is in place that we have for allergy, right? So that they can try something else that will not cause that allergic reaction. And I think as well, concerning even, like, customers tend to get frustrated. For example, you have a question about a particular product. Having a team that is in place that can personalize the interaction, you can get a speedy response. So if the response time is very quick in those interaction, it will cause even that to be converted into a sale, rather than me leaving that cart, forgetting about that, and even going to another website to purchase the same thing that maybe you would have even given me a better deal had I just caught on to an agent where we could meet on that level, where we could conversate on that level, and then, something could be offered that could be pleasing to both of us.
Yeah, the thing that stood out the most in that is just how customer service agents can really turn those kind of frustrations into moments of like marketing
Right.
or sales, the right customer service agents, anyways. And that's just so interesting to know. Because I think, even personally, that's probably something that is holding me back from certain brands that I just marked an X on and I knew I'm never going back. But if there was a situation where I had that personalized or empathetic support, I probably still would be shopping there. So that's a very, very good benefit of the right customer service agents, because there's a lot of frustration that comes with peak season buyers. So yeah, that's really interesting. So I know we've spoken a lot as well about, measuring performance over the peak season, right? And using them as like actionable insights for the next peak season. Mel has touched on that a lot from an operational standpoint. So I'm really interested to know how exactly, right, can businesses translate those post-season insights into tips that can help them in the next season? How can they collect these tips, and like what metrics specifically should they be tracking?
So when we think about it, we can think about it from this point of view. So the stat, it kind of show us exactly what is happening, right? But the customer's feedback let us know the reason why we're seeing the number that we're seeing. For example, you might look at a CSAT score, because I think CSAT, customer satisfaction, is very important as a data to look back into, because if you have a proper CSAT survey for selected questions that might come into the inbox, you could always go back through those CSAT to see what are the feedback, what are the different scores, and so on. So I think the feedback is very important, because let's say you are seeing a score of 1, right? You will be able to see what comment the customer made. Inside of looking at the comment that the customer made, you can see what you need to address as a business. You can see if it's a case where the agent mishandled the ticket, and maybe it's a case where the agent, need to be trained further on something. Or you could see where it could be something that is not necessarily a problem of the customer service team, but maybe the website glitches and all of those things are what led to that poor score. So it's important that we have that that avenue open where customers can give feedback and to even rate the different interaction. When we look at resolution time, for example, we can always look at the first contact resolution. So like how much interactions it take to actually close out a general ticket. For example, where is my order? Those don't always need to be like a full 3, 4, 5 conversation. Most times someone just need a tracking link to show them where the order is or what's the latest status. But looking back at the data, if you can see the percentage of tickets that came in that was just one touch, for the next period that is coming around, you might be able to put something in place that will even cause the overall team to be more efficient, especially with all that we have now with AI and automations. And then, as I said, the first response rate, that's important too, because the aim on a chat interaction, you want to make that as quickly as possible. So if you realize that your CSAT was really great for your chat service, and you realize that the conversation rate was within 30 seconds consistently on average, then, well, you will see exactly what's the contributing factor there, versus if someone is trying to do a chat and it's taking 1 hour, 30 minutes, 1 hour for a response, that's not a chat anymore. That's an email conversation. So that will definitely birth frustrated customers. So looking back at the data, you can see what went well from a first response point of view, or where we can improve. I think Mel alluded to it earlier as it relates to having the right person in the right place who know where you want to get to. So what you'll have to do maybe for this year when we're planning, instead of having 3 agents to support, we are going to have maybe 4 or 5 or 6, and instead of just going like 5 days per week, let's try to do 7 days per week, even if it's not 24/7, but at least have someone in the inbox at least for 8 hours on the weekend, because that can massively impact response time on Mondays, for example, because instead of having to go through the entire backlog from Saturday and Sunday, it won't be so heavy for the team that starts on Monday morning. As I said, you want to be able to look at some of the data, but you also would want to see what the customers are saying. So CSAT, Net Promoter Score, and so on, those are also very important data that you want to look at to help to forecast for what the future should eventually bring.
Right. And now we spoke about customer feedback as well. But I know a lot of businesses find it awkward collecting that feedback, right? And they're not really sure the best times to collect it or even the best ways to collect the feedback. So if you could just share a quick tip as well from your experience, what are the best ways to collect customer feedback, you think?
I would say, looking at general feedback, there is room for it to be very negative. The fact that you're reaching out to someone for something that probably they don't want anymore, right? Versus, you do have some interactions where you will get valuable insight because people will eventually share why they love the product so much. I think what is important is that we find the right point at which we should trigger that survey. I mean, we do want to get the negatives. We do want to get feedback that are hard at times, but it's about finding the right touch point. If, as I said, a lot of customers who might, be frustrated because of the payment or, just where is my order type of situation, you could always have these triggered based on the type of interactions that will be encountering. So, for example, you might not want to turn on any CSAT for the team that deals with recovery, but you want to ensure that the CSAT is there for anyone that is handling where is my order, the return, all of those different aspects that you need those insight into. And then maybe you could always have like your NPS survey that goes out to a certain set of customers. It could be those that are your high revenue recurring type of customers as well. Hear from them what is going well, what they think could improve us as a business because they're already loyal to you as a business. So I'm sure because they would also want to see you continuing to provide the high level of support, that thing that held them or caused them to stay with you as a business. So you could still have strategic point where you send even those survey to see why they are still with you, and if even to be advocate for you, are they willing to share any insight or are they willing to recommend the people even to you as a brand and so on. So yeah, I think it's about having that strategic approach to know exactly where you need to have those surveys placed. And it's important too that having these surveys in place that you actually have a team that's looking at it. So a lot of times you might be collecting, but you're not even paying attention to the different feedback that is coming in, right? Because you might just have someone who leave a negative comment for something that's very simple, very simple, and if you had someone looking at that, you would be able to catch that and you will convert that negative feedback to a positive one because you already have a solution in place. Because, sometimes there's oversight, but you can always fix those things if you are monitoring what's happening. So that's what I would say concerning that.
All right. Thank you so much. Oh my God. This entire episode has been so helpful, I'm sure, for people that are planning to make the best out of the peak season for e-commerce business owners. So we're just going to wrap it up with one practical tip on each side. So I'm going to start with you, Mel. Can you just share one practical tip from an operational perspective that businesses can apply right now to help them maximize their peak season?
Does it really have to be only one? But yeah, if I need to share one, it's to not wait until the rush hits to prepare your support team, because even a simple refresher training with updated FAQs, common holiday scenarios, escalation paths, like that, those can be like the difference between chaos and control. Small prep today, like it's gonna save the company big headaches later.
Really, really good one. Honestly, it's fine to give one because I feel like you've given so many tips in the course of the episode. So how about you, Clement, from a customer success perspective? What's one tip you would say?
One thing that I would say from customer success point of view is, success in any form of interaction is when the experience end on a positive note. So I would say ensure that you have a structured knowledge base for the agent. Like as I said earlier, when we are knowledgeable on a thing, we have confidence in how we go about dealing. So if we have that, comprehensive knowledge base where people can have that confidence and assurity when they are interacting with the different customers, it just might aid in turning different customers into advocates in the long run.
Awesome. Thank you so much, you guys. This was such a wholesome episode. And I guess that's it. So make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you haven't watched our other episodes, make sure you go back and watch our other episodes. And make sure you outsource your peak season support with LTP Plus. Stay tuned for the next one, guys. Bye. Thank you so much.
Alrighty, bye bye.